Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's lesson. My name is Wes. This is Interactive English. And if this is your first time here, this channel, it's just all about helping you guys practice and improve your English. And today it's kind of a cultural lesson because we're talking about a holiday in the United States, an American holiday. But it's also a vocabulary lesson because I'm going to talk about different words and phrases that are associated with this holiday, which I first just want to say to all of you, happy 4th of July. That is the holiday we're talking about, July 4th. Happy 4th of July to especially those who are with me right now. Rod, Manati, Lolly. Great to see so many members here. Excellent. Great to see you guys. Deepa, Emitni, Michelle Leonardo, Aiden, how are you? Thank you guys for joining me. And I do want to... Putri, Surya, welcome. Thank you. And I do want to take some of your questions about this holiday as I go through and tell you a little bit about the 4th of July, share with you some of my thoughts and opinions, and teach you some new words along the way as we go through this. So if you have any questions specific to the 4th of July, write those in the chat, and I will try to answer them as we go through the lesson. So I first want to start out when, again, this is more just me, as somebody from the United States. When I think of the 4th of July, I don't know why, and this may not be the same for everyone. The first thing that I think of are fireworks, okay? The same way that if I think of Thanksgiving, I think of turkey. For 4th of July, I think of fireworks because this has become like a bit of a trademark for this holiday. There are, at the 4th of July, there are so many different fireworks shows that take place all across the country. And this is something that I really associate with this holiday. Even though other holidays people may send off fireworks as well. So let's do a little vocabulary, because if you're thinking about fireworks, then some ways, some adjectives that you could use to describe fireworks, like dazzling, sparkling, shimmering, glittering, those are all adjectives you could use to describe, I think, something that's like lighting up, that's lights in the sky. And then booming, I think that's more one for the sound, that these fireworks, they explode and it's just a booming sound. Now, you might also wonder, well, let's talk about some different kinds of fireworks. I told you, if you stick with me, I guarantee you will learn some new words, because I bet many of you may not know the words of these specific fireworks. So some very common fireworks, I think, if we start over here, okay, up in the top corner, there's sparklers. Those are just those sticks. They just light up and they just sparkle. Like I said, you could describe fireworks as like sparkling. Now, poppers, I think these are the ones that I think a lot of children will play with them. You throw them on the ground and it just makes that snapping sound, that popping sound. Over here, a smoke bomb, self-explanatory. It's just this, you light it. Nothing explodes. It's just a bunch of smoke. Down here, we have these mortars. Now, mortars are the type of fireworks that you see, it's kind of like a tower. They shoot up in the air and then they explode, and it's a bigger explosion, such as the fireworks like right here in this picture. I'd say those come from mortars. Then we have down here Roman candles, which are those sticks that you hold out and it shoots the fireworks out. And then, of course, over there, the M80s. Those are the ones that make the very loud noise. So I have a question for all of you. Are there any holidays, specific holidays in your country in which everybody sets off fireworks? That fireworks are a big part of this holiday in your country? Let me know. Let me know in the chat. So again, just happy 4th of July. Thank you guys to those who are just joining. Suray, good to see you. Alex, Amir, Orlando. Glad you guys can join me. Oni, So if you have some questions, all right, just write them in the chat about the 4th of July. Hopefully, as we go through the lesson, I will answer some of those questions. So I've already told you that for me, when I think of 4th of July, I think about fireworks. But that is not why the 4th of July has become a holiday. So let's talk a little bit about the history, the history of the 4th of July and the United States in general. So it really all began with these gentlemen right here who they are referred to as the founding fathers of the country. So this is more cultural vocabulary specific to the United States. The founding fathers are the people who who put together the United States. In total, there are, I think, about 8 or 10 founding fathers. I probably should know their names, but all right, this would be a good trivia question. So we have George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, because it's called a Madisonian democracy. That's 3. Samuel Adams, I know that one. That's it's a popular beer in the United States. Who else do we have? This is embarrassing. Benjamin Franklin. Did I say him already? Alexander Hamilton, because think of the play Hamilton. It's a very famous play. And gosh, I'm gonna come back. If I think of more, I'll ask you. What I asked was John Hancock. John Hancock was there. I don't think John Hancock is considered one of the founding fathers. Abraham Lincoln is a very famous president, not one of the founding fathers. Abraham Lincoln comes about 100 years later after this. So the reason why is that these gentlemen right here, on the July 4th, 1776, they wrote the Declaration of Independence. This was the document that they created in which they said that they are no longer a British colony. The United States is its own country. And they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Now, speaking of John Hancock, somebody was asking about that. It's in here. You can see that on the Declaration of Independence, John Hancock wrote his name very large because supposedly at the time, King George, who was the king of England at the time, supposedly he had very poor eyesight. So John Hancock wrote his name very large so that it would be easy for King George to say his name. Now, this has also become an expression in American English. Sometimes you could ask somebody if they say, "Oh, here's a piece of paper. Can I get your John Hancock?" And if somebody is asking for your John Hancock, it basically means signature. So this is an idiom that people might use in the United States to talk about signature. I need to get your signature. I need to get your John Hancock. All right, there you go. That's an English idiom for you about this. So the other thing that I think of when I think of the July 4th, people think of liberty. Liberty is another word to express freedom. People might use it in a phrase and say that you are at liberty to do something. You are free to do something. You're at liberty to do it. I don't know why, when I think of liberty, I think of somebody holding their hands up high in the sky. They're free. When in fact, a better image probably would have been this one right here, which is the Statue of Liberty. Some people call her Lady Liberty. And this is a famous landmark in the United States located in New York City. Even though this was donated, wait a second, she's over here. This was donated to the United States, I believe around like 1886, which is over 100 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But again, this is a famous landmark in the United States. And July 4th, there would be fireworks going off and over Lady Liberty to celebrate this holiday. So the other thing that I have, because we were talking about fireworks, some of you answered that question that like Rod, Carnival, Christmas. So yeah, there are many different holidays I think people would set off fireworks. And I know they do that in the U.S. Pichuri says, Lunar New Year. All right, excellent. In the U.S., there's many, but I definitely think of July 4th as like the main firework holiday. The other question that I had for you is, in your country, does the flag have a name? Does anybody have a name for your flag? So, for example, in the United States, you think of the Declaration of Independence. The United States was born. All right, this is when the country was born. And you think of the flag because the flag is a symbol for a country. And in the United States, our flag, people would just call it the red, white, and blue. So people would refer to, if they want to talk about the flag, they may just say the red, white, and blue. Or an older term, which is not as common, people might call it Old Glory. So those are two different names for the flag in the United States. You could call it the red, white, and blue or Old Glory. So what do you think? What are some names for your flags in your country? Surya, I've heard that France help Americans to get their independence. Yes, that is true because before it was the British and the French that were fighting for the U.S. territory. All right, I believe the British won that. It became a colony of Britain. So when the United States started, they signed the Declaration of Independence. They fought the Revolutionary War. That is probably another word that I should have added. So the Revolutionary War was the war that the U.S. was fighting against England at the time. They were fighting for their independence. And the French were helping the colonists. They were helping the United States to defeat the British. That is absolutely true. So what is saying? In Orlando, in Cuba, is called the Solitary Star. Very cool. Union Jack. Excellent. What else do you guys have? Bolivia, tricolor. All right, I didn't know that. From Japan. So interesting that flags typically have a nickname. The U.S., the red, white, and blue, or you could say Old Glory. Now, the other thing that I'd say is that when you think of countries and freedom, like when they celebrate their Independence Day or their National Day, you think of things like the national anthem. So what this means is that if you're talking about a country's national anthem, it's talking about the song that is related to that country, that represents that country. And again, just like all countries have a flag, which is their symbol, pretty much all countries have a national anthem. I really don't know of any country that does not have a national anthem. And that would be my next question to you guys. What is the national anthem in your country? And I don't know if there is an English translation for that, but in case you don't know what the national anthem is in the United States, it is the Star Spangled Banner. All right, this is the national anthem in the United States. I'm debating whether I should sing some of it for you because I am a horrible singer. But in case I'm sure you've heard it probably in movies, or if you're watching a sporting event from the United States, they all start out playing the national anthem, and it begins oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. Okay, I'll stop. Who's brought stripes and bright stars. So it's a song. It goes on for maybe just a couple of minutes. Typically national anthems, I don't think they're not very long songs, but again, I think this is another way that countries have an identity through their flags, through their music, and the national anthem. So what do we have? National anthem. What do you guys got? So Lai says in France, the 14th of July, Bastille, the French Revolution. Excellent. I was actually in Paris. When was it? Maybe back in 2003 3 for the Bastille holiday, and there were there were many fireworks going off. Patricia, the national anthem is Indonesia Raya. Excellent. Lali says, Drapeau tricolore, my French pronunciation, I'm sure, is very poor. I apologize for that. God Save the Queen, British national anthem. Excellent. So yeah, song countries, they have a national anthem. Again, it's another identity. And this is something too, when I think of the flag, that is somewhat universal. I think when people want to show respect to the flag, they would do the salute. And that is that motion. In case you did not know that word, people might salute the flag, or if they are in the military, that is something that people will salute. Kind of a way of showing recognition to either someone else, because you could salute a person, or something that is important like a flag. So some questions that somebody asked. Mazir said, how many stars does the U.S. flag have? So when the United States declared independence, there were 13 stars on the flag, and that represented the 13 colonies, because at that time, in 1776, there were 13 colonies. Today, there are 50 states, so the flag has 50 stars on it. Good question. Excellent. I love it. Let's see. You guys, again, sharing information. I love this because, someone says Cyprus does not have a national anthem. Okay, I did not know that. In Somalia, national anthem. Suraj, the French national is Les Marseilles. Excellent. So I love this, just being able to share this information with each other. Not only you're learning about a little bit about U.S. culture, but you're learning about everybody else's country a little bit as well. So Ray says, I'm a good singer. Thank you. Really? Excellent. So now you know what I think of when I think of the 4th of July. I think of fireworks. You know a little bit about the history and the signing of the Declaration in 1776 on July 4th. And John Hancock wrote his big name, which today stands for kind of signature. Red, white, and blue is the flag. Now let's talk a little bit I want to talk about a couple of words that people think about when you think about these holidays, about independence or national days. And the first one I want to start out with is patriotism and patriotic. So patriotism is talking about the noun, and patriotic is the adjective. The reason why I'm bringing up these two words is because sometimes they are confused with these two words right here, nationalism and nationalistic. Nationalism is a noun, nationalistic is an adjective. So what I would say is patriotism, the reason they're confused is because both of them refer to a love of one's country. Sometimes people might even say you could use them as synonyms, but I do think there is a difference. Patriotism to me is a love of your country because you are proud of it. You are proud of the accomplishments. You are also proud of the way of life, the way that your country has developed and the way the people are and the culture and society. And you could say that you have patriotism. You're proud of your country. Or, for example, if you want to use an adjective, you could say you are patriotic. Somebody who's patriotic, they're proud of their country and the way of life. Now, the reason I say it's a little different from nationalism is because nationalism also, it's like you're proud of your country, but I think also it has to do with power. A little bit about power, that you're proud of your country's power and might. And it could be the power that the country has because of the military, and they've, winning many wars, and you're fighting different wars, or you're taking over land, or maybe even nowadays economically. So, and in both of those cases, some people might not think that's a good thing. that if a country is at war and they're taking land from another country, some people may, especially those that are not from that country, they may be against it. But the people that are proud of their country for those things, like, oh, the country is so powerful, that's a little more nationalism and nationalistic. So again, be aware of that difference. If you just want to be that you're proud of the country, it's a good thing, then I would use patriotism and say that you are patriotic. If you're talking more about the power and maybe the government, the power that your country has, that's a little more nationalism. And that's why I think some people say that patriotism is a good thing. Nationalism could be a little dangerous. Because again, you're being saying that, oh, like power is the most important thing, which I think most of us can agree that it's not. It can be a little dangerous. But that's why I showed these two different pictures, like patriotism with the flag and you're proud of the country, and nationalism, you see right here, they're doing this parade, and it's a little bit of a military parade, because that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about too, because when you think of July 4th and independence, the Revolutionary War, they were fighting for it. The military was involved in that. And because of that, people will think about this holiday and they want to pay tribute. Pay tribute to the founding fathers who wrote the Declaration of Independence and wanted to be free. They wanted their liberty. All right, I'm reviewing some of these words. They want to pay tribute for the people that fought in the war and pay tribute to the people that fought in other wars to protect freedom and to protect that liberty. And they're paying tribute basically then to veterans. These people right here, veterans, if you don't know this word, it's talking about people who were once soldiers, people who were in the military. And then when they basically, you retire, you're no longer in the military, you are considered a veteran. All right, you were part of the military, and because of that, I think there is a level of respect that veterans have because they were fighting in wars, or they were just part of the military and protecting the country. And I think this is probably true in most countries. I think if veterans in most countries, I think should be regarded with a level of respect because of their patriotism for the country. So let's look at, the next thing I wanted to just show you is, again, talking about a phrase that people might use when talking about July 4th. The love of country is a phrase that people might say in English, and you could use it in talking about your country. If you're talking about like, oh, I have a true love of country. You'd be talking about your country, but it's an expression that people would say when they are proud of their country, to show a love of country. All right, so let me talk a little bit more, answer a few more questions. Some people said, you were asking about if nationalism and patriotism are the opposite. No, they are not the opposite. Again, they're similar in that people are, you're proud of your country, you have a lot of pride for your country, but the difference is really like why? Because patriotism is more you're proud of the people and the way of life and some of the accomplishments. Nationalism is you're proud of the country in part because of its power, that you feel that the country has power in or influence in some way. And perhaps, we don't know, maybe they use that power in a good way, or perhaps they use that power in a bad way. And that's where people will disagree about whether nationalism is a good thing or whether it could be a bad thing. But generally, I think if you just want to say that you're proud of your country, I think it's better to say that you are patriotic. That would be the adjective that I would encourage you to use so that other people aren't confused. And if you just want to say that you're proud of your country. So let's see. Some other questions. So Christopher kind of like, what represents The colors red, white, and blue? That is an excellent question. And to be perfectly honest with you, Christopher, I am not 100% sure. But that, again, with Google at your fingertips, we can just look it up. I know that they represent different, I'd say, adjectives, like meanings. But now that, okay, I have it. So let's see. So the colors represent, this is what I'm going to read. It says, the colors of the pales, the vertical stripes, are those of the flag of the United States. White is a representation of purity and innocence. The red is representing like valor. And the blue signifies vigilance and justice. Okay? So that is what it means. Like, so I knew that they represented some type of adjective, some meaning. It was not like a representation of some historical event, not like the stars, which represent the states. So white is innocence, red, valor, and blue is talking about vigilance and justice. Excellent question. Great. I just learned something. So what else? Some of you guys are sharing with me some more national anthems. Excellent. Sorry, I'm trying to go through these. So I said, Brian says veterans are nationalists. No, I would say again, because again, people don't necessarily join the military because they want their country to be really powerful. Because the military, I think, in many cases, are there really to protect the country, and to help out in certain ways. For example, so in that regard, I would think people would refer to veterans as more patriotic. Overwhelmingly, like these people are they're patriots, they're patriotic, they love their country, and I think that is how people would really think of veterans in that case. Let's see. English Geek asked, like, valor. What is the meaning of valor? I think valor would be more thinking about a more simple word would be like bravery. Somebody who's brave. They have bravery, honor. Those are words that I think you could use to describe the meaning of valor. All right, so let's now look at the last part. We've talked about what I think of fireworks. We talked about the history. Now we just talked a little bit about patriotism, nationalism, and some of the other significance of July 4th. I do want to kind of start to wrap it up with the activities. What are things that people do for this holiday? And I think somebody had actually asked that a bit earlier. So the first thing I think of would be just like a picnic. July 4th, I would not say that it is a family holiday. Some families spend it together, but it's not a holiday like Thanksgiving or Christmas, which are definitely more family holidays and you get together with your family. I think July 4th could be spend it with your friends or just spend it however you want. But people might go on a picnic, or perhaps this is something else. This is another expression in English, fire up the grill. So if you're talking about the grill, you can see, you guys know what a grill is, which you cook. You could cook meat or chicken or veggies. And a phrase that people would say it, they'd say, let's fire up the grill. So instead of saying we're going to have a grill, it'd say, let's fire up the grill, and you're going to invite your friends over and you're going to cook a lot of different food. Fire up the grill. Good expression. Or you might have a barbecue. So this setting right here, this activity where you have they have fired up the grill and they say, we're going to invite all of our friends over because we're going to have a barbecue. And in that case, they're kind of talking about the event. Not necessarily, because barbecue does refer to food, but it could also, in this case, refer to the entire event. That you guys are going to get together, you're going to eat some food, you're going to hang out, and you're going to have a barbecue. Or you could throw another word in there and say it's an outdoor barbecue. I think those are also very common on July 4th. Or you could also call it a cookout. I think that may not be as common, but you could tell people, hey, let's have a cookout. We're going to get a bunch of food and we're going to eat it together. Or perhaps, who knows, Some people just might watch Netflix. That's probably, even though I'm not in the United States, this is probably how my wife and I and our little girl, we're going to celebrate it later. We might just watch a little bit of Netflix. So I kind of want to end it on that lighter note of just some activities, but mostly I think people would go outside and they would watch the different fireworks show. So again, just want to let you know, saw some of you guys, patrons and members today. Always great to see you. If you guys like what we do at Interactive English and you want to sponsor or support our channel, you can get a YouTube membership or join us on Patreon. There are links down below in the description, and we offer some different rewards. For example, one level of the reward is to get access to all of these notes from the different live lessons that we do. So you guys can check that out if you're interested, but thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you've learned a little bit more about the July 4th holiday and why we celebrate it and how we celebrate it. I hope you also learned some new words, some of the vocabulary that we talked about, whether it was about fireworks or veterans or patriotism or nationalism. These are words that you will hear, especially if you are in the United States and it is July 4th. These are definitely words that you guys might come across. So just want to say thank you, Angela, Aiden, Ahmed, Amnati, Abdurrahman, Esther Anderson, Jose, Mary, Surey, Hadi. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope, even if you're not celebrating 4th of July, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful 4th of July. And I will see you guys next time for another live lesson. Goodbye. Bye, Lali, Sawantri, Putri. Good. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Yeah, I don't want to go, but it's time. All right. Have a great weekend, and I will see you guys later. So long.